Is anyone here? Just give me a sign. God. Hello? Ah, okay. Are we on yet? I have no clue. We should be on time. Forgive the lighting. And I don't have a watch. Let me get my watch. According to my watch, we have a few more minutes to go. So take the time to settle in. Hi, thanks for the hearts. I hope the light is okay. I'm really sorry, but I need some light to read. That's better. Hey, Joanna. I guess we can start, can't we? So I'm continuing where Joanna left off. Welcome to Reading in Isolation. My name is Saman Giraud, and I'll be reading chapter 1 of 1,000 Nights and One Night for you tonight. For those of you who did not listen to the first sessions with Joanna, it's basically about King Shahryar, who had his heart broken by his wife, whom he caught with another man. And he killed her, and ever since he would marry a new woman, and after the first night, the morning after, he would kill them too. Shahrazad is the daughter of the vizier, who says that she is willing to marry the king in order to prevent him from killing more women, and maybe even to heal his heart. So let's start. Here begin the 1,000 Nights and One Night. The tale of the merchant and the Efreet. Shahrazad said, "It has come to me, O auspicious king, that there was once a merchant of the merchants, master of many riches and of affairs of commerce in all lands. One day he mounted on horseback and left for certain places whither his business called him. As the heat became too vexing, he sat down under a tree, and putting his hand into his food bag, took from it a snack and also some dates. When he had finished eating the dates, he threw the stones to a distance. But suddenly, an enormous Efreet appeared, who approached him, brandishing a sword and crying, 'Rise up, that I may slay you as you have slain my child.' On this, the merchant asked, 'How have I slain your child?' The other said, 'When you threw the stones of the dates you had eaten, they struck my boy in the breast, and he died forthwith.' Then said the merchant to the Efreet, 'Know, O great Efreet, that I am a believer and know not how to lie. Now I have many riches and children and a wife. Also I have at my home deposits which have been trusted to me. Give me leave to go to my house, that I may render each his due, and when I have done this, I will return to you. Indeed, indeed you have my promise and my oath that I will return to you forthwith. Then you shall do to me as you wish, and Allah is a witness of my words." So the Jinni had trust in the merchant and let him depart. The merchant returned to his own land, rid himself of his obligations, rendered each his due, and lastly revealed to his wife and his children the fate that had overtaken him. So they all, relations, women and children, began to weep. Then the merchant made his will and rested with his folk until the year's end, after which, taking his winding sheet beneath his arm, he bade farewell to his nearest, to his neighbours, and to the folk of his house, and went forth, as it were in spite of his nose. Then indeed was lamentation made, and grief cried over him. As for the merchant, he continued to journey until he came to the garden where he was due on the first day of the new year. Now, while he sat down to weep over his fate, behold, a venerable sheikh came towards him, leading a gazelle by a chain. He saluted the merchant, wishing him a life of prosperity and saying to him, "What is the reason of your staying alone upon this jinn-haunted spot?" Then the merchant told him of his adventure with the Ifrit, and the sheikh, master of the gazelle, being greatly astonished, said, "By Allah, your faith, my brother, is indeed rare, and your story is so prodigious that were it only written with a needle on the inner corner of an eye, it would yet be a matter of reflection to the circumspect." Then he sat down by the merchant's side, saying, "By Allah, I shall certainly stay here with you, my brother, until I have seen what happens between you and the Ifrit." So he stayed, conversing with the merchant, and beheld him swooning with fear and horror, a prey to deep sorrow and to stormy thoughts. Suddenly, as the master of the gazelle waited, there came a second sheikh, who advanced towards them leading 2 dogs of greyhound breed, which were both black. He came up to them, wishing them peace, and asking the reason of their stay upon that jinn-haunted spot. So they told him the story from beginning to end. But hardly had he seated himself when a third sheikh came towards them, leading a bay-colored she-mule. And he also wished them peace and asked them the reason of their stay. Again, they told them the story from beginning to end. But nothing is to be gained by repeating it in this place. In a little while, a sand devil lifted, and a great wind blew heavily, coming towards the middle of the grassland. Then, the dust dispersing, the self-same Jinni appeared, a fine sharpened blade in his hand, and sparks of fire storming from his eyes. He came to them, and seizing the merchant from among them, said, "Come, that I may kill you as you killed my child, who was the breath of my life and the fire of my heart." Then the merchant began to weep and lament, and the 3 sheikhs also set themselves most conspicuously to weep and groan and sob. But the first sheikh, master of the gazelle, at last plucked up his courage and kissed the hand of the Jinni, saying, "O Jinni, O chief among the kings of the Jinn and the crown also, if I relate to you the tale of myself and this gazelle, and it is such that you marvel at it, O grant me in return mercy for a third of the blood of this merchant." The Jinni answered, "Assuredly, O venerable Sheikh, if you tell me the story, and I find it indeed extraordinary, I will grant you mercy for a third of his blood." The tale of the first sheikh. The first sheikh said, "O great Efreet, know that this gazelle was my uncle's daughter and my own flesh and blood. I married her when she was quite young and lived with her for nearly 30 years. But Allah granted me no child by her. So I took a concubine who by Allah's favor gave me a man-child as beautiful as the rising moon, with fine eyes, meeting brows, and perfect limbs. When he had grown to be a boy of 15, I was obliged to journey to a far city on an important matter of business. You must know that my uncle's daughter, this gazelle, had been initiated since childhood into sorcery and the lore of enchantment. By the art of magic, she changed my son into a calf, and the slave, his mother, into a cow, and put both of them under the care of our herd. A long time afterwards, I came back from my journey and asked for my son and his mother. Then my wife said, "Your slave is dead, and your son has fled, I know not with her." For a year I remained broken by my heart's grief, with the tears ever in my eyes. Then, when the yearly feast of the day of sacrifice came round, I sent to bid my herd choose a well-fattened cow for me, and he brought me one, but she was my concubine, bewitched by this gazelle. Then I pulled up the sleeves and skirts of my garments, and knife in hand prepared to sacrifice the cow. But suddenly she began to moan and weep abundant tears. So I stopped and ordered the herd to sacrifice her. He did so, but when he had flayed her, we found neither fat nor flesh on her, but only skin and bone. Then I repented that I had sacrificed her, though my repentance was of no avail, and gave her to the herd, saying, "Bring me a well-fattened calf." So he brought me my son in the likeness of a calf. When the calf saw me, he broke the cord that held him, and running to me, rolled at my feet with groans and tears. Then I had pity on him, and said to the herd, "Bring me another cow, and let this be." At this point in her tale, Shahrazad saw the approach of morning and discreetly fell silent. Then her sister, Dunyazad, said, "Sister, your words are sweet and gentle and pleasant to the taste." And Shahrazad answered, "Indeed, they are nothing to that which I would tell both of you tomorrow night if I were still alive." And the king thought good to spare me. On this, the king said to himself, "By Allah, I will not kill her until I have heard the rest of her tale." Then the king and Shahrazad passed the rest of the night in each other's arms, till the king departed to sit in judgment. When he saw the vizier approach, carrying under his arm the winding sheet destined for his daughter Shahrazad, whom he believed already dead, the king said nothing to him, but continued to administer justice, raising some to office and debasing others, until the fall of day. So that the vizier was plunged into perplexity and the extreme of astonishment. When the divan was over, King Shahryar returned to his palace. And when the second night had come, Dunyazad said to Shahrazad, "Sister, I pray you finish for us the tale of the merchant and the genie." To this Shahrazad answered, "With all my heart, and as my duty is, if the king permits." Then the king said, "You may speak." And she said, "It is related, O favored king and lover of justice, that when the merchant saw the calf weeping, his heart was softened. And he said to the herd, 'Leave this calf to graze among the cows.' The genie was mightily astonished at this strange tale, and the sheikh, master of the gazelle, continued, "O master of the kings of the jinn, my uncle's daughter, this gazelle, was looking on and said to me, 'Certainly we must sacrifice this calf. He is fattened to perfection.' But for very pity I could not make up my mind to sacrifice him, and at my order the herd took him again and went away with him. On the next day, as I was sitting in my house, the herd came up to me and said, 'Master, I have a joyful thing to tell you, good news, worthy of recompense.' 'Surely,' I answered. Then he said, 'Great merchant, my daughter is a sorceress and has learned magic from an old woman who lodges with us. Yesterday, when you gave me that calf, I brought him with me into the presence of my daughter, and scarcely had she set eyes on him when she covered her face with her veil, first weeping and then laughing. Finally she said to me, "Has my worth so fallen in your eyes that you let strange men like this come into my presence?" "Where are these strange men?" I answered. "And why have you wept and then laughed?" Then she said, "This calf is the son of our master, the merchant, but he's bewitched. Yes, both of them, him and his mother, bewitched by his stepmother. And it was the calf expression of his face at which I laughed. And if I wept, it was for the mother of this poor calf slain by his father." I was greatly astonished by these words of my daughter and waited with impatience for the dawn that I might come to tell you. "Then, mighty Jinni," continued the sheikh, "hearing the herd's words, I went out with him, drunk and without wine, for joy of seeing my son again. When I came to the herd's house, his young daughter welcomed me, kissing my hand, and the calf came and rolled at my feet. Then I asked the herd's daughter, 'Is what you say of this calf true?' And she answered, 'Yes, master, indeed. He is your son, your heart's delight.' Then said I, my gentle, helpful child, if you deliver my son, I will give you all the cattle and the goods your father holds for me. She smiled at my words and said, Master, I would only be willing to take these riches on 2 conditions. The first, that I marry your son. And the second, that I have your leave to bewitch and confine whomsoever I wish. Without these things, I cannot answer for the good of my interference against the evil arts of your wife. Mighty Jinni, when I heard these words of the herd's daughter, I answered, be it so. And further you shall have the riches which your father holds for me. As for my uncle's daughter, you may dispose of her life as you wish. When she heard me say this, she took a small copper basin and filled it with water, speaking magic incantations over it. Then she sprinkled the calf with the water and conjured him in these words, if Allah made thee a calf, remain a calf. But if thou art bewitched, return to thy former shape by the grace of Allah, the Most High. Even as she spoke, the calf, beginning to tremble in this limb, returned to human form. I threw myself upon him in a long embrace, and then I asked him in the name of Allah to tell me what my uncle's daughter had done to him and to his mother. So he told me all that had happened, and I said, my son, Allah, Master of Destinies, has raised up one to save you and restore your rights. After this, good Jinni, I married my son to the herd's daughter, and she, by magic arts, bewitched my wife, turning her into this gazelle which you now see. Passing by here, I saw this excellent merchant, and asking him what he did and hearing what had happened, sat down to watch the event. Such is my story. Then the Jinni cried, your tale is marvelous enough, and I grant you mercy for 1/3 of his blood. After this second shake, Master of the 2 greyhounds came forward and said, O mighty Ifrit, if I tell you the adventure which befell me from these 2 hounds, which are my brothers, and if you find it more marvelous than the tale you have just heard, will you grant me mercy for another 1/3 of this man's blood? Assuredly, venerable Sheikh, answered the Jinni, if your adventure be indeed more marvelous. So the second shake began. And this is where I'm going to close the chapter, and Joanna is going to pick up with the second shake tomorrow evening at 9:45 p.m. in her own home with her own candles. Tomorrow we also have a special guest after the reading, Dave Moskin and Danny, who are going to perform live too. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I wish you a wonderful night, a peaceful night, and I look forward to better times where we're going to see and meet each other in person again. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for the hearts.